There are two competing ideas out there. One says COVID-19 emerged from nature, and the other says it was a lab leak. How likely, in your opinion, is it that COVID-19 was leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virology? What evidence do we have for that?
This is actually a very important question. So at the moment, right, there are many uninformed voices supporting a lab leak, as you just said, despite the lack of evidence. And these are everywhere, from social media, political circle, mainstream newspapers, which is actually very bad and hampering the international collaborations, to trace the origin of the virus. We have this review. So our review was a very clear response to that. But we provided a quite comprehensive review in bringing all kinds of current scientific evidence that supports zoonotic origin and of SARS coronavirus 2, and while addressing this misinformation supporting a lab leak. So basically, we're saying all current scientific evidence supports that a novel virus, such as SARS coronavirus 2, which was unknown to us, to humans before, could not have been escaped from a lab, right? And the emergency of the virus is similar to other zoonotic viruses, such as SARS coronavirus and HIV, right? So the evidence we reviewed is quite comprehensive, ranging from previous experience learned from SARS coronavirus outbreak back in 2002 and other viruses, and epidemiologic data from the early days of the pandemic in Wuhan, and the final genetic and evolution evidence of the virus that the SARS coronavirus 2 are evolutionary close to, okay? And the molecular and genomic evidence support the natural origin of the virus, not a laboratory, construct. So this is not possible from a leak from a lab.
So if you look at the evidence, the scientific evidence, the arguments provided by the lab leak camp, how should we read into them? Do you buy them?
No, those evidence are, and some of them are quite specific, right? For example, at the very beginning, they mentioned a short genetic code in the genome, right, called furin cleavage site. Because we're evolutionary biologists, that's actually in our domain. So we immediately know, that particular code they claimed, as evidence of, engineering of the viruses is completely like a joke, because we know that that particular stretch of, genetic code, they exist in other close related coronaviruses. And from evolutionary biologist's point of view, it's completely natural. It could be involved in nature. There's no need to it to be engineered in a lab.
Yeah, Professor Jiang, you talked about uninformed opinions. Many of those so-called uninformed opinions actually come from commentators, from the media, from politicians, not from the science community. Is there a consensus of some sort from the science community, from scientists like yourself? If not, what are the sticking points so far?
As we just discussed, right, that a lab leak could not have contributed to the emergence of the virus, right? Consider many levels of evidence we examine, right? Current scientific evidence does not support, such scenario, the lab escape. So I think most scientists in the academia, particularly us evolutionary biologists, would think SARS coronavirus 2 has a zoonotic origin, right? Although we still have not been able to identify the bat reservoir, right, nor the intermediate animal host. It has no problem that SARS coronavirus 2 could have evolved naturally, right? So as studies from other scientists and us also suggested, right, mutation, right, this is change the genetic code in the virus genome, right, mutation, recombination, so basically as switches of different pieces of genetic code of the genome, right, between different viruses. And natural selection, right, were sufficient, right, to select for the virus highly capable of human transmission, right? You don't need a lab engineering to do that.
What are the things that made it difficult, or perhaps more difficult than tracing, previous viruses? And how important is it to really trace the origin of COVID-19?
If we know how it happened for this one, we can prevent the next one, which could be like very close, right, in the next 5-10 years. For this particular virus, the differences of the difficulty the difficulties in finding the origin of the current virus is that we know that this is the second time that virus from this genus called beta coronavirus, a subgenus sarbecovirus, right? This is the group of viruses which have pandemic potential, right? So this is the second time it emerged in China and led to a pandemic. The social and economic environment is also drastic different, compared with the SARS coronavirus emergence in Guangdong back in 2002. And to identify the right intermediate animal, we need to increase our sampling, right, in the right wild or farmed animal populations, right, which are known to be susceptible to the virus, all right? And also to find the bad host, we need to increase our sampling across China and perhaps Southeast Asian countries, right? And so these are challenging works and may take many years to complete.